So we've been asked several times by SL clients, what am I doing now that, I use MaxQ Microcheck, I use Sam Lacan e-banking, I use Force BI hard close, I use progressive fixed assets. How is this all going to work its way into Acumatica? All the essentials in one box. So we're going to address that and provide some other information on the very open architecture, API architecture, and how several ISVs in the world of third-party publishers have connected with Acumatica. And then that kind of lends itself to the next item, robust add-on community. And then industry-leading pricing. Acumatica does a very unique pricing model. It's based on consumption, so it's not based on number of users. There is one instance of user-based pricing, but for the most part, it's on consumption basis, and we can explain that. All essentials in one box. Acumatica has provided a very robust marketplace where you can go out and you can buy or license a lot of third-party products. But what I had mentioned earlier is things like the essentials that you used to have in SL, like hard close, San Lacan e-banking, progressive fixed assets or some other fixed asset product. Oh God, I forget. There's so many of them out there.
MaxQ, something like that.
Yeah, well, MaxQ,
special case. Yeah.
MaxQ is still there. MaxQ has its own licensing versus the way they do it with a lot of the other ones, but MaxQ is there. You still have your microcheck and all that. But Acumatica has made it much easier to navigate through all that third party, or they have a lot of those technologies, hard close, e-banking, fixed assets, payroll, all that is built in. Now, I should mention payroll because I'm still a supporter of third-party payroll, but it's all there. So you don't have to go and buy a product or search all over the place for another product.
And this touches right on your point about both the third parties and the community, which is really an online community of users to share and basically talk with each other in areas that may be relevant. So that kind of collaboration, not only within the product, but within the product community, I think is very, very relevant piece that's there. Drew, there's also, as we look at that pricing model, I thought you might share either a couple more points. You might have covered most of that already earlier in the introduction.
Sure. Well, in the pricing model, so if you're an SL user, you had, if you're an old SL user, you had the module pricing, and if you remember back, GL was $3,500, and all that, and then you buy users on top of it, and a standard user was I think $1,950, and if you were a project user or an extended user, whatever they called it, it was like $3,950. Well, what Acumatica does is they look at it as, well, you're not going to be paying by user, you're not going to be paying by module per se, but the way they license it is they license it by consumption, and they look at several what they call business transactions, and business transaction being how many vouchers or debit adjustments do you put into the system per month, or how many invoices and credit memos do you put in the system per month, or how many project transactions go into the system per month. I think we can get you the complete list. But what they do is they look at those different transactions, business transactions, and we basically go to the prospect of the client and we say, okay, give us the number per month of each one of these, and whatever the highest single number is, that's what the consumption model is based on. And then they have a grid. Acumatica has a grid. We have a grid that basically shows where that one value fits in the grid. And that's how pricing happens. That's how your environment is basically sized. And then from there, you have your industry standard module or modules. It's like a package. Like you have construction, you have financials, you have distribution, yeah, you have manufacturing. So you figure out what industry you're in, you choose that, and then you have the environment size that goes along with it. And then yes, you can add other peripherals to it, and those are at a price, but the model itself is not based on users. So if you called us up and said, hey, I got 10 more users, how do I get them on the system? Well, they're already available on the system. All you have to do is give them access. You don't pay for them. I have 200 users. Well, that's great. You have 200 users. Well, all 200 can get on the system. No problem at all. And there's no upside in price or anything. So it's a nice model the way they do it. What else do we got, Joel?
A couple of things here just about some of the access tools, if you want to share some of these points with the group.
Sure. So access from anywhere on any device. Basically, it really is. It's any device and from anywhere. As long as you have, I guess, as long as you have an internet connection with that device, you can gain access to Acumatica. You purchase it in the App Store, whether you're on a Mac or on a Android. And once you have the app on your device, you can access just like you're accessing on a computer. And you'll see when if you're interested in Acumatica and we're doing a full-blown demonstration, Joel does a great job at showing how he can be communicating with his phone real time. There's no delays. It's real time. You can take a picture for a business lunch receipt and press a button and bang, it's right in your expenses. It's booked into your time and all that stuff. So it's a pretty powerful tool. So if you're in construction, you're out on the construction site, you can be communicating with the back office. You can be doing approvals. So even, you're in an airport and somebody's waiting for an approval for a purchase order or something. Yeah, you just log in and just, approve. So it's a pretty powerful tool.
The other element, and you mentioned even earlier on with some of our options with continuing to use SL is on your on-premise or hosted environment. Acumatica, as described earlier, is a browser-enabled application. It's software as a service. So we are paying a subscription, and I don't need to have servers installed. I don't need to have extra routers or gateways or other security considerations. I'm not installing software. There are some extensions or pieces that it could require installation if I'm using an Outlook plugin, for example, or a third-party Excel add-in. There, I guess, could be an element of an installation, but at the end of the day, the infrastructure is really if I have that device, browser, a tablet, I can access the application through a secure connection and taking advantage of that kind of infrastructure and architecture. So that the technology is designed to leverage the web, and I'll share some of that with you as I use multiple tabs and just normal features I can use on a browser that people are accustomed to. And that foundation provides the framework not only for extending Acumatica if needed internally, but for also working with third parties. Drew mentioned that ISV community, and you see an example setting here of folks who've dedicated time to work with Acumatica, such as BigCommerce, to Shopify, DocuSign or eSign, whichever one you may be using from a document contract management perspective. Avalara from a sales tax perspective. HubSpot on the marketing wall. So this foundation of Acumatica provides, in techno terms, I guess, for any of the technical people on the phone, an open API, an application programming interface. We need more acronyms in the world, but that open APIs provide that foundation for integration, whether it's some of these more commonly known applications like this, or specific business point in time applications. We've had clients in a unique trucking perspective that have integrated with a couple different trucking solutions from a transportation management standpoint, and that list goes on and is quite extensive in that regard. That open architecture gives us that foundation to work on to be interconnected as everything is today. With that framework and foundation, we need to think about access. And as Drew said, when you have access, you're in. And the aspect of how do we allow it? And not only your data period, as Drew described, but logic that controls access to the data. Drew earlier mentioned, SQL Server and direct access. In the old days when someone would be in, SQL Server Studio and writing their own queries and directly at the data, which had no respect or concept for the permissions that might be assigned to that data. In Acumatica's generic inquiries, they respect those permissions. So you have that user who can create purchase orders, but can't see the general ledger. They don't even see the generic inquiries related to the ledger. If they do run them and or the report, they would see no data. And Acumatica lets us have the best of both worlds, of access to our data with the visibility and access controlled as you as the business dictate. There's also the ability to extend and validate that with Active Directory, because I think we all have enough passwords to think about in the world. It'd be nice to not have to think about that. And there are options to tie Acumatica directly to your Active Directory. So users are validating against their login. And that also allows a further control in that as that Active Directory ID is disabled, Acumatica is disabled as well. One less thing to think about from a user access and control perspective. The hostings we mentioned, software as a service, it is at AWS. So from a physical standpoint, there's that perspective. And the advanced security and the applications I mentioned really provides a great number of pieces, including if you'd like multi-factor authentication down to the Microsoft Authenticator, et cetera, to your phone for someone to actually log in. So your control and your aspect over that.
Joel, one other thing with data, that comment, your data period. One of the things we've done, because we are a pretty active SL shop, and we have a lot of clients that are moving over to the Acumatica side of things, we've actually built some processes where we're taking the AP and the AR data, and actually I think we've done it to a degree for inventory and projects also, but we've taken the data right out of SL and we brought it into custom data tables in Acumatica, and we've provided screens where you can look at the legacy data that you'd be leaving behind in SL, and you can see it right on the screen along with the live Acumatica data. So if I'm looking at vendor activity, I can look and see all the data marked as SL that came over. Then I'd see my opening aging for the move over to Acumatica, and then anything that's in Acumatica after that. So basically what it does is it skirts around the old concept that if you're moving off your legacy product, you need to leave it running in the closet. Now, we don't recommend that you take your old servers or whatever and use them as boat anchors, but in the same light, the way we've done it is it's allowed our clients to basically not have to go to the closet or into the basement where the old server is and log into it and look at data. It's right there on the screen. And in the project and inventory side of things, we've basically built some general inquiries to pull up that data. We didn't create screens for it, but if need be, we could. But it allows users, former SL users that want to see their legacy data in one-stop shopping. It's right there. Now, General Ledger, that data, you can choose how much GL data you want to bring in just in normal circumstances. You can bring in from the beginning of time transactionally, or you can bring in net change amounts. You can bring it in for 1 year, 5 years, how many years you want, depending on what your needs are. But it's really at the subledger level that we've provided that that luxury, basically, of having the data all sitting there for you to look at. Let's see. So what we discussed here with your friendly licensing, all employees, not just a few, no per user fees, and really removes the business bottlenecks by not having, in the old days, well, we can only have 10 licenses and we have 15 people using the system, and we got to wait around for five people to get off to get these 5 people in and stuff like that. Basically, it allows everybody access to the system and to all the data that's there. Now, at a security level, the Acumatica allows for security down to data points, but it does allow for anybody and everybody within the organization, as long as they are a login user, to go in and do their job or look at data or whatever without being limited by how many people can access it concurrently.
We do thank you for attending, and we can certainly provide you any guidance or perspective, whether that's around Acumatica's capacity abilities or staying on SL for as long as you can to continue to get the ROI out of that solution and share any other data with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.